My name is Elizabeth. I am 24 years old, and I live in a small apartment in the city. I remember the exact moment I realized my place in this family. It wasn't during a scream or a fight. It happened silently, over a slice of cake at a dining room table. It was my brother's college graduation dinner. The house was full of laughter. My parents were beaming with a pride I had never seen directed at me. My father stood up, clinking his glass for silence. He made a speech about hard work and rewards. Then he pulled a set of shiny silver keys from his pocket. "Congrats, son," he said, his voice full of warmth. "Here is your new car." Everyone cheered. My brother looked like a king. I clapped the loudest because I loved him. Then my father turned to me. The smile vanished from his face. He reached into his pocket again. He didn't pull out a gift. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the white tablecloth until it hit my hand. "Rent is due Sunday," he whispered, low enough so the guests wouldn't hear. $900. I looked at the car keys in my brother's hand, then I looked at the bill in mine. There was no applause for me, just a demand. I nodded calmly. I didn't cry. But in that second, the daughter who had spent her life trying to be perfect finally shattered. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Elizabeth. I am 24 years old. I need you to understand that the dinner didn't happen in a vacuum. It wasn't just one bad night. It was the result of 24 years of training. I was trained to be the invisible one. I was trained to be the one who didn't need anything. Growing up, there was a script in our house. My brother, Ryan, was the main character. He was loud, he was messy, and he was demanding. I was the stagehand. I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on so the show could continue. I remember when we were kids. Ryan was 2 years older than me, but it always felt like I was the older sister. One afternoon, when I was 10 and he was 12, he decided to play baseball in the living room. He knew the rules. We all knew the rules. But Ryan didn't think rules applied to him. He swung the bat too hard and smashed Mom's favorite porcelain vase. It shattered into a million pieces. Ryan started crying immediately. He wasn't crying because he was sad. He was crying because he was scared of getting in trouble. I was reading a book in the corner. I heard the crash and looked up. I saw his face, red and panic-stricken. Without thinking, I put my book down. I went to the kitchen and got the broom. I swept up the shards while he sat on the sofa, sobbing. When Mom came home, she saw the empty spot on the shelf. She looked at me holding the dustpan. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice sharp. "Why weren't you watching him? You know he gets excited." She didn't ask who broke it. She asked why I hadn't stopped it. Ryan got a hug because he was upset. I got a lecture about responsibility. I was 10. That was the pattern. In high school, it became more obvious. Ryan struggled with school. He wasn't stupid, but he was lazy. He didn't turn in homework. He forgot projects until the night before. When he got a C on a math test, my parents threw a celebration dinner. Because it wasn't an F, they praised his effort. They bought him a new video game console as a reward for hanging in there. I came home the same week with straight A's. I put my report card on the fridge. My dad glanced at it while grabbing a beer. "Good," he said. "Keep it up." That was it. Good. There was no dinner for me. There was no reward. It was expected. I was the smart one. I was the easy one. I was the one they didn't have to worry about. They spent all their emotional energy worrying about Ryan. Would he graduate? Would he make the team? Would he get into college? Because they spent all their worry on him, they had none left for me. I became a ghost in my own house. I learned to handle my own crises. When I was 16, I got a flat tire in the rain. I called my dad. He didn't answer. I called my mom. She picked up, breathless. "Liz, can it wait? Ryan forgot his cleats for the game and Dad is rushing them over to the field right now. We're in a panic." "It's okay," I said. "I'll figure it out." I hung up. I sat in the rain on the side of the road and read the manual. I changed the tire myself, covered in mud. When I got home later that night, nobody asked why I was wet. They were too busy talking about Ryan's game. They didn't even know I had a flat tire. I never told them. I learned that my problems were inconveniences to them. Ryan's problems were emergencies. I went to college on a scholarship because I knew they couldn't, or wouldn't, pay for me. They were saving for Ryan. They paid his tuition, his rent, his food. They sent him money for socializing. I worked 2 jobs while studying. I worked at the library in the mornings and a diner at night. When I graduated, I didn't want a party. I knew it would be small. I moved back home for a few months to save money for an apartment. I paid for my own groceries. I cleaned the house. I did the laundry. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought that if I was helpful enough, quiet enough, and perfect enough, eventually they would see me. I thought that if I took up less space, they would love me more. I was wrong. Taking up less space just made it easier for them to ignore me. I was the glue holding the family together. I remembered birthdays. I bought the gifts and signed their names. I reminded Dad to take his blood pressure medicine. I listened to Mom complain about her friends. I helped Ryan write his resumes because he didn't know how. I was useful. And because I was useful, they kept me around. But they didn't see me. They saw a function. They saw a maid, a secretary, a safety net. I didn't realize how deep the resentment went until Ryan's graduation. He had finally finished college. It took him 6 years. 6 years of failed classes, switched majors, and my parents writing checks. But he finished. And you would have thought he won a Nobel Prize. The week leading up to Ryan's graduation was chaos. The air in the house was thick with excitement. It felt like electricity, buzzing in every room. But none of that electricity was for me. My mother was in a frenzy. She wanted everything to be perfect. She was inviting aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors. She was ordering catering. She was buying decorations. "Elizabeth," she called out on Tuesday morning, "I need you to go to the store, we need more wine, and pick up those specific napkins Ryan likes, the blue ones." "I have work, Mom," I said. I was working remotely from the dining table. "Can't you take a break?" she snapped. "This is a big week for your brother, we all need to pitch in." Pitch in. That was the phrase. It implied we were a team, but a team has equal players. We weren't a team, I was the staff. I closed my laptop. I went to the store, I bought the wine, I bought the blue napkins. When I came back, Mom didn't say thank you, she just pointed to the table. "Set them over there." Wednesday was worse. I came home from a run and saw my dad in the garage. He was on the phone, his voice low. When he saw me walking up the driveway, he quickly hung up. He looked guilty. "Hey, Dad," I said. "Everything okay?" "Fine," he said, wiping his hands on a rag, "just arranging some things." He closed the garage door quickly. He didn't look me in the eye. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. Call it intuition. I knew something was happening. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself he was probably just planning a surprise toast, or maybe a vacation gift for Ryan. But the way he looked at me, it was cold. It was the look you give a stranger who walks into a private conversation. That night, at dinner, the conversation was 100% Ryan. "I can't believe you're finally done," Mom said, beaming at him. She heaped more potatoes onto his plate. "You worked so hard," Ryan chewed with his mouth open. "Yeah, it was brutal, but I pulled it off." He hadn't pulled it off. I had edited his final thesis. I had stayed up until 3 a.m. 3 weeks ago fixing his grammar and restructuring his arguments, because he was going to fail otherwise. I did it because he begged me. I did it because I didn't want to see my parents disappointed. "We're so proud," Dad said. "We have a big surprise for you on Saturday." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Really? What is it?" Dad winked. "You'll see. It's something to get you started on the right foot. A man needs the right tools to succeed." I sat there, eating my salad. Nobody asked about my job. Nobody asked about my week. I had just been promoted at work 2 days prior. I was now a senior analyst. It was a huge jump for a 24-year-old. I cleared my throat. "I got promoted on Monday," I said quietly. The table went silent for a second. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, not looking up from her plate. "Oh, Ryan, did you call Grandma? She wants to know what time to arrive." "That's nice." That was it. My career milestone was a speed bump in the conversation about Ryan's guest list. I felt a lump in my throat. I swallowed it down. I was used to swallowing my feelings. I told myself it didn't matter. This was Ryan's week. I could let him have this. I was the big sister. I was the mature one. But the feeling of wrongness kept growing. It wasn't just that they were ignoring me. It felt active. It felt like they were pushing me away. On Thursday, I walked into the living room and Mom and Dad stopped talking immediately. They were looking at a piece of paper. Dad folded it up and shoved it in his pocket. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing," Dad said, "just bills, boring stuff." His voice was tight. He looked annoyed that I had interrupted. "Elizabeth, make yourself useful," Mom said. "Go check the guest bedroom. Aunt Linda is staying there, make sure there are fresh towels." I went to the guest room. I folded the towels. I fluffed the pillows. I stood in the middle of the room and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked small. "You're imagining it," I whispered to my reflection. They love you, they're just stressed. But deep down, I knew. The atmosphere in the house wasn't just celebratory. It was secretive. They were hiding something. And whatever they were hiding, I wasn't going to like it. I tried to talk to Ryan on Friday. I found him in his room, playing video games. Hey, I said, leaning on the doorframe. Are you excited? Yeah, he said, not pausing the game. It's gonna be sick. Dad said the gift is huge. Do you know what it is? No idea. But I bet it's expensive. Dad's been grinning all week. Ryan didn't seem to notice the tension. He never noticed tension. He floated through life on a cloud of support that I kept inflated for him. I'm happy for you, Ryan, I said. And I meant it. I loved my brother. He wasn't malicious, he was just oblivious. He was a product of my parents' spoiling. Thanks, Liz, he said. Hey, can you iron my shirt for tomorrow? I don't know how to do the collar right. Sure, I said, I'll do it. Of course I would do it, I always did it. I went to my room that night and lay in bed. The house was quiet, but my mind was racing. I felt like I was waiting for a bomb to go off. I didn't know when, and I didn't know where, but I knew the explosion was coming. Saturday arrived. The graduation ceremony was long and boring, but my parents cheered like maniacs every time Ryan's name was mentioned. I sat next to them, clapping politely, holding Mom's purse, holding Dad's program, holding the water bottles. Then came the dinner. It was at our house. My parents wanted to host it to show off. The backyard was decorated with lights. Tables were set up with white linens, the ones I had ironed. The smell of roast beef and garlic filled the air. About 30 people were there. Family, friends, neighbors. Everyone was drinking wine and laughing. The mood was high. I didn't sit down for the first hour. I was too busy. I was refilling drinks. I was taking coats. I was showing people to the bathroom. I was bringing out trays of appetizers. Elizabeth, we're low on ice. Dad barked at me as he walked past. He didn't look at me, he just gave the order. I'm on it, I said. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bag of ice, and hauled it outside. I filled the cooler. My hands were freezing and wet. Oh, Elizabeth, you're such a help, Aunt Linda said, patting my arm as she reached for a beer. What would your mother do without you? I don't know, I said, forcing a smile. Finally, dinner was served. I found a seat at the end of the table, near the edge of the patio. It was the worst seat, furthest from the conversation, but I didn't mind. I was exhausted. We ate. People gave toasts. Uncle Mike told a funny story about Ryan as a toddler. Everyone laughed. Ryan soaked it up. He looked handsome in the shirt I had ironed. He looked happy. Then Dad stood up. He tapped his spoon against his wine glass. Cling, cling, cling. The chatter died down. The patio went silent. The crickets chirped in the background. I want to make a toast, Dad began. His face was flushed with wine and happiness. To my son, Ryan. To Ryan, everyone shouted. Ryan, Dad continued, his voice getting thick with emotion. We know it hasn't been an easy road, but you stuck with it. You showed us what you're made of. You became a man. I stared at my plate. He became a man, I thought. I wrote his papers. I woke him up for exams. I paid for his Uber when he was too drunk to drive home. Your mother and I, Dad said, wanted to give you something to mark this occasion. Something that says, we believe in you. Something to help you start your next chapter. He reached into his pocket. The guests leaned in. I leaned in too. He pulled out a set of keys. They were heavy, shiny, silver keys with a black fob. A car key, a brand new car key. It's in the driveway, Dad said, pointing to the front of the house. A brand new sedan, 2025 model, fully paid off. It's yours, son. The table erupted. Ryan's jaw dropped. No way, he screamed. He jumped up and hugged Dad. Mom was crying, clapping her hands. The guests were cheering, whistling, and applauding. Go check it out, Dad yelled. Ryan ran toward the front of the house. Half the guests followed him to see the car. I stayed seated. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. A new car. I drove a 10-year-old hatchback that broke down every winter. I paid for every repair myself. I paid for my own insurance. I paid for my own gas. My parents had never bought me a car. They had never even offered to help with a down payment. Fully paid off, Dad had said. That car must have cost $30,000. Maybe more. I sat there clapping slowly, mechanically. My hands felt numb. The crowd started to thin out as people went to look at the car. Dad didn't go. He stayed by the table finishing his wine. He looked satisfied. Then he saw me. He turned his body toward me. The warmth that he had shown Ryan moments ago evaporated. His face settled into a serious, businesslike expression. He walked over to where I was sitting. I looked up at him, expecting him to say something like, Isn't it great? Or maybe, can you help clean up the plates? He didn't say that. He reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a sheet from a yellow legal pad. He lowered his voice. It wasn't a whisper of conspiracy, it was a whisper of shame. He didn't want the remaining guests to hear. Here, he said. He slid the paper across the tablecloth. It stopped right next to my hand. I looked down at it. It was a handwritten note, in my father's block handwriting. It said, Rent agreement tenant, Elizabeth start date, June 1st monthly rent, $900 utilities. 1/3 share due. Sunday. I stared at the number, $900. I looked up at him. I couldn't speak, my mouth was dry. What is this? I managed to whisper. You've been living here for free since you graduated, Dad said. His voice was calm, matter of fact. You have a good job now, you got that promotion. It's time you start contributing to this household, we can't support you forever. I felt the blood drain from my face. Support me, I said. My voice shook. I buy my own food, I do the cleaning, I pay for my own gas, I handle my own bills. You live under my roof, he said, cutting me off. Real world rules, Elizabeth, rent is due Sunday. If you don't like it, you can find somewhere else to live. He looked at me with zero empathy. There was no softness in his eyes. He wasn't treating me like a daughter. He was treating me like a tenant he wanted to evict. Then from the front yard, I heard Ryan revving the engine of his new car. Vroom, vroom, everyone cheered again. The contrast hit me so hard it almost knocked me out of my chair. In the front yard, my brother was receiving a $30,000 gift for doing the bare minimum. In the backyard, I was being handed a bill for existing. He gets a car, I whispered, and I get a bill. Dad stiffened. Don't be jealous, Elizabeth, it's ugly. Ryan needs help getting started. You're capable, you can handle it. We expect the check on the kitchen counter by Sunday morning. He turned around and walked away. He walked toward the laughter in the front yard. I sat there alone at the table covered in dirty plates and half-empty wine glasses. I looked at the yellow paper. $900. It wasn't the money. I had money. I had savings. I could afford $900. It was the message, the timing, the cruelty of it. They were telling me as clearly as possible that I was not a priority. I was a resource. I was a paycheck. I was a burden they wanted to monetize. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, final click, like a lock turning. I looked at the house. I looked at the people celebrating. I realized I didn't belong here. I never had. I folded the yellow paper carefully. I put it in my pocket. I stood up. I started clearing the plates. I stacked them. I carried them to the kitchen. I washed them. I dried them. I put them away. I finished my shift. I played my role one last time. The party ended around 11 p.m. Ryan went out to a bar with his friends to celebrate. My parents went to bed, exhausted and happy. Good night, Elizabeth, Mom called out from the stairs. Don't forget to turn off the porch lights. I won't, I said. My voice was steady. I turned off the lights. The house went dark. I went to my room and closed the door. I didn't turn on my lamp. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. The silence of the house pressed against my ears. I replayed the scene over and over, the car keys, the yellow paper, the look in my father's eyes. Don't be jealous. It's ugly. He had called me ugly for pointing out the unfairness. I took a breath. I reached for my phone and opened my banking app. I checked my savings account. I had been saving for 2 years. I had enough. I had enough for a deposit, for first and last month's rent, and for a few months of expenses. I didn't need them. I had never needed them. I stood up. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt cold. I felt distinct. I pulled my suitcase out from under the bed. I started packing. I didn't pack everything. I didn't want everything. I only wanted what was mine. I packed my clothes. I packed my work laptop. I packed my shoes. I looked at the bookshelf. There were photo albums. Pictures of family vacations where I was standing off to the side. Pictures of Christmases where I was holding the camera. I left them. I looked at the little trinkets on my dresser. Gifts from aunts. Souvenirs. I left them. I wanted to travel light. I wanted to leave this life behind completely. I moved silently. I was an expert at being quiet. I knew which floorboards creaked. I knew how to open the closet door without it squeaking. I folded my shirts neatly. I placed them in the suitcase. It took me 2 hours. By 2 a.m. my life was packed into 2 large suitcases and a backpack. My room looked different. It looked sterile. Like a guest room at a hotel. It didn't look like my room anymore. I sat down at my desk one last time. I took a piece of plain white paper and a pen. I needed to write a note. I debated what to say. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to write a 10-page letter detailing every hurt, every slight, every moment of neglect from the last 20 years. I wanted to list the times I cried alone. I wanted to list the times I fixed their messes. I wanted to hurt them. But then I realized they wouldn't understand. If I wrote an angry letter, they would just call me dramatic. They would say I was hysterical. They would say I was ungrateful. They would twist my words to make themselves the victims. Oh, poor Elizabeth is having a breakdown. I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. I needed to be as cold and direct as the bill they gave me. I wrote, "Mom and Dad, I am moving out. I have taken my things. Do not worry about the rent. I won't be living here. Please do not contact me. I need space. Do not come to my work. Do not call my friends. I will reach out when I am ready. If you try to force contact, I will disappear completely. Elizabeth, I read it over. It was perfect. No emotion. No love, Elizabeth, just facts. I took the yellow rent agreement paper my dad had given me. I placed it on the center of my desk. I placed my note on top of it. I grabbed my car keys. Not new shiny keys, old scratched keys, but they were mine. I carried my suitcases down the stairs, one step at a time. Step, silence. Step, silence. I reached the front door. I paused. I looked back at the living room. I saw the empty wine glasses on the coffee table. I saw the graduation balloons bobbing against the ceiling. I felt a wave of grief hit me. I wasn't grieving the house. I was grieving the family I wished I had. I was grieving the hope that one day, if I was just good enough, they would see me. I realized now that day would never come. I opened the front door. The night air was cool. I walked out to my car. I loaded the trunk. I got into the driver's seat. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. I started the engine. It sputtered, then caught. I backed out of the driveway, past Ryan's shiny new sedan gleaming in the moonlight. I didn't look back. I put the car in drive and headed toward the highway. I didn't know exactly where I was going to sleep that night. Maybe a motel. Maybe a friend's couch. It didn't matter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter or the sister or the fixer. I was just Elizabeth, and I was free. The first night was the longest night of my life. I stayed at a motel about 20 miles from my parents' house. It was a cheap place. The neon sign outside buzzed loudly, flickering between red and darkness. My room smelled like old cigarettes and lemon cleaning spray. The carpet was sticky. The bedspread had a cigarette burn in the corner, but it had a lock, and I was the only one with the key. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't unpack. I just sat there in the silence. For 24 years, my life had been loud. It was filled with my mother's anxious instructions, my father's booming demands, and my brother's constant need for attention. Now the silence was so heavy it felt like a blanket. Then my phone started. It began around 11:30 p.m. I had set it on the nightstand. The screen lit up the dark room like a strobe light. Buzz, Mom, I stared at it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. It was a physical reaction. I was trained to answer. Every time Mom called, it meant she needed something. It meant there was a crisis I had to fix. My hand twitched. I wanted to reach out and slide the green button. I wanted to say, "I'm here, what do you need?" But I sat on my hands. I physically sat on them to stop myself. The phone stopped. Then it started again immediately. Buzz, Dad. Then again, Ryan. I watched the names flash on the screen. It felt like they were in the room with me, poking me, demanding my attention. Then the text messages started pouring in. Mom, 11:45 p.m. Elizabeth, where are you? The hallway light is still on. Mom, 11:50 p.m. Your car is gone. Is this a joke? Pick up the phone. Dad, 12:05 a.m. This is childish. Come home right now. We have guests coming tomorrow for brunch. Ryan, 12:15 a.m. Liz, did you go to the store? Mom is freaking out. I read them all. I didn't delete them. I wanted to remember this. Notice what they were saying. They weren't asking why I left. They weren't asking if I was safe. They were worried about the hallway light. They were worried about the brunch guests. They were worried about the inconvenience. I turned the phone face down. I didn't turn it off. I needed to know what they were doing, just in case they came looking for me. But I couldn't look at the light anymore. I curled up on top of the bedspread in my clothes. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the graduation dinner in my mind. I saw the shiny car keys. I saw the yellow legal paper. I felt the paper in my pocket now. It was my anchor. Whenever I felt guilty, and I felt very guilty, I touched that paper. It reminded me that I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a tenant. And tenants are allowed to move out. The next morning, Sunday, was the day rent was due. I woke up with a headache. I showered in the motel bathroom. The water was lukewarm. I put on fresh clothes from my suitcase. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, but my jaw was set. I looked different, harder. I went to a diner nearby for breakfast. I ordered eggs and coffee. I opened my laptop. I had work to do, not my job, my survival. I needed a place to live. I had savings. I had been saving secretly for 2 years, putting away 20% of every paycheck. I had enough for a deposit and a few months of rent. I spent the entire day scrolling through apartment listings. I needed something fast. I found a listing for a studio apartment in the city near my office. Available immediately. I called the landlord. He met me an hour later. The apartment was small. It was one room with a kitchenette in the corner and a tiny bathroom. The window looked out at a brick wall. The floor was scuffed. "It's small," the landlord said, looking at me, "but it's quiet." "Quiet is good," I said. "I'll take it." I signed the lease right there. I wrote a check for the deposit. I got the keys. They were plain brass keys, no remote fob, no silver shine, but they were heavy in my hand. They felt better than the car keys my brother got. These keys bought me freedom. I moved in that night. I had no furniture. I had no bed. I went to a store and bought a cheap air mattress, a pillow, and a blanket. I bought a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a knife. That was my first dinner in my new home. A peanut butter sandwich on an air mattress. My phone was still blowing up. The tone of the messages had shifted from confusion to anger. "Dad, Sunday, 6 p.m. You are being incredibly selfish. You ruined your brother's weekend. Everyone is asking where you are. What do I tell them? You are making us look bad. Mom, Sunday, 8:30 p.m. I can't believe you would do this. After everything we gave you. We put a roof over your head, we fed you, and you run away like a thief. Your father is heartbroken." He wasn't heartbroken. He was embarrassed. He was losing control. I finally decided to send one message. Just one. I needed to set a boundary or they would call the police to report me missing. I typed it out carefully in the Notes app first. I wanted it to be cold, direct. "Mom, Dad, I am safe. I have moved out. I am not coming back. Do not come to my work. Do not call my friends. I need space. If you care about me, you will leave me alone." I sent it to a group chat with Mom, Dad, and Ryan. Then I blocked their numbers for the night. I lay down on the air mattress. The room was dark. The city sounds outside were loud, sirens, cars, people shouting, but inside it was just me. I took a deep breath. My chest felt lighter. The tight band that had been around my ribs for 20 years was gone. I cried then. I cried for a long time. I didn't cry because I wanted to go back. I cried because I grieved the family I never had. I grieved the fact that my leaving was a relief, not a tragedy. I went to work on Monday morning like nothing had happened. I wore my best blazer. I put on makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes. My coworkers talked about their weekends. "I went to the beach," one said. "I had a barbecue," said another. "How was your brother's graduation?" my boss asked me. I froze for a second. "It was memorable," I said. "He got a new car." "Wow, nice gift," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Very nice." I threw myself into my work. Work was safe. Spreadsheets didn't yell at you. Data didn't play favorites. If I did a good job, I got a specific result. It was fair. I stayed late every night that week. I didn't want to go back to the empty apartment yet. I wanted to be busy. Meanwhile, back at my parents' house, the wheels were falling off. I didn't know the details at first. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb for my family. But information leaks. My cousin Sarah texted me on Wednesday. "Hey Liz, is everything okay? Aunt Linda called my mom and said your house is a war zone. She said your dad is screaming about the electricity bill and your mom is crying because she can't find the insurance papers." I looked at the text. I felt a pang of guilt. I knew exactly where the insurance papers were. They were in the blue folder in the third drawer of the filing cabinet, labeled Policies. I had organized that cabinet 3 years ago. I started to type. "Tell them to check the blue folder," then I stopped. No, if I told them I was still doing the work, if I told them they would learn that they could just call me to fix things. I deleted the text. I replied, "I'm fine, Sarah. I moved out, they'll have to figure it out." 2 weeks passed. The silence from my end was absolute. The noise from their end was getting desperate. Ryan found ways to reach me. He called me from his friend's phone because I wasn't answering his. I picked up, thinking it was a client. "Hello, Liz, it's Ryan, don't hang up." His voice sounded shaky. Ryan never sounded shaky. He usually sounded bored or excited. "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked. I sat down in my office chair. I kept my voice low. "You have to come home," he said. "It's a disaster here." "Seriously? I'm not coming home." "But Dad is going crazy. He's yelling at everyone. He yelled at Mom yesterday because there were no clean towels. He threw the laundry basket down the stairs." "He never did his own laundry," I said. "And Mom never did it either, I did it." "I know," Ryan said, "but I don't know how to use the machine. I put a red shirt in with the whites and now Dad's undershirts are pink. He almost killed me." I almost laughed. It wasn't funny, but it was absurd. "Ryan," I said, "you are 24, read the label on the bottle, Google it." "It's not just the laundry," he said. His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's the bills. Dad missed the internet payment. The Wi-Fi got cut off this morning. He's blaming you. He says you usually mail the check." "I did usually mail the check," I said, "but I don't live there anymore." "He says you did it on purpose to sabotage us." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just left. The fact that the house falls apart when I leave just proves how much I was doing." "Please, Liz," he begged. "Just come over on Saturday, just for an hour. Help us sort out the filing cabinet. Help me with my resume. I have a job interview on Monday and I don't know what to say." "No, why are you being so mean?" he whined. "We're family." "I'm not being mean," I said. "I'm being an adult. And you need to be one too." "Meet me," he said. "If you won't come to the house, meet me for coffee, please, I'm drowning." I hesitated. I shouldn't have agreed. But he was my brother. And unlike my parents, his cruelty was mostly due to ignorance, not malice. "Fine," I said. "Saturday morning, the coffee shop on 4th Street, 10 o'clock, do not bring Mom or Dad." "I won't," he promised. I went to the coffee shop on Saturday. I arrived early. I sat in a corner where I could see the door. I wanted to be able to escape if my parents showed up. Ryan walked in at 10:05. He looked terrible. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept. He walked with his shoulders slumped. The arrogance from graduation day, the king with his new car keys, was gone. He sat down opposite me. He ordered a black coffee. "You look tired," I said. "I am tired," he snapped. Then he sighed. "Sorry, I'm just stressed." "What's going on?" "Everything," he said. "Dad is making me pay rent now." My eyebrows shot up. "Really?" "Yeah." He said since you're gone, he's short on cash flow. He's making me pay $500 a month, and I have to pay for my own gas now. "Welcome to the real world," I said dryly. "It sucks," he said. "And my job, Liz, I'm failing. I don't know what I'm doing." My boss asked me to write a project summary. I stared at the screen for 4 hours. "I usually send those to you to fix." He reached into his backpack. He pulled out a crumpled stack of papers. "Can you just look at it?" he asked. "Just this once, please. I'm terrified I'm going to get fired." I looked at the papers. I looked at his desperate face. My instinct was to grab a red pen. It would be so easy. I could fix his grammar, organize his thoughts, make him look smart. It would take me 20 minutes. I remembered all the times I did his homework in high school, all the college essays I wrote. I had built a false reality for him where he was competent. If I fixed this, I was just lying for him again. I took a sip of my tea. I put the cup down slowly. "No, Ryan," he froze. "What, why?" "It will take you 5 minutes." "It's not about the time," I said. "It's about the fact that you have a degree you didn't earn. I earned it for you, and now you have a job you can't do." "I can do it," he protested. "I just need help." "Then ask your boss for help," I said. "Or take a writing class, but I am not doing your work anymore. I am done being the secret engine of your life." He stared at me. His eyes filled with tears. "You really hate us, don't you?" "I don't hate you," I said gently. "I love you enough to let you fail. Because if you don't fail now, you'll never learn how to stand up." I stood up. I put money on the table. "You can do this, Ryan," I said, "but you have to do it alone." I walked out of the coffee shop. My heart was pounding. It felt cruel, but it also felt necessary. I was cutting the cord. I knew the peace wouldn't last forever. My father was a man who needed to control his environment. And for the first time in his life, I was an element he couldn't control. It happened 3 weeks after I met Ryan. It was a Tuesday evening. A summer storm had rolled in. Rain was hammering against my window. Thunder rattled the glass. I was in my apartment, reading a book. I had bought a small rug and a lamp. The place was starting to feel like home. It was cozy. Then there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a heavy, authoritative pounding. Bang, bang, bang. I knew who it was immediately. No one else knocked like that. I froze. My stomach dropped. I looked at the peephole. It was Dad. He was standing in the hallway, dripping wet. He was wearing his tan raincoat, which was soaked dark brown. His hair was plastered to his forehead. His face was red. I debated not opening the door. I could pretend I wasn't home. But the lights were on, and I knew he wouldn't leave. He would pound until the neighbors called the police. I took a deep breath. I unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door, but I stood in the frame, blocking his entry. "How did you find me?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking behind my back. "Your Aunt Linda," he spat. "She has a big mouth. Are you going to let me in? I'm soaking wet." I stepped back and let him in. He walked into the tiny room. He seemed too big for it. He brought the smell of rain and anger with him. He looked around the apartment with a sneer. He looked at the air mattress. I still hadn't bought a real bed frame. He looked at the brick wall view. "This is it?" he asked. "You left a 4-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood for this, a slum." "It's not a slum," I said. "It's clean, and it's mine." "It's pathetic," he said. "You're living like a refugee." "I'm living like an adult who pays her own bills," I countered. "Why are you here, Dad?" He took off his wet hat and slapped it against his leg. Water sprayed onto the floor. "I'm here to end this nonsense," he said. "Pack your bag, you're coming home." "No," I said. "Elizabeth, look at me," he commanded. He used his father voice, the one that used to make me shrink when I was a child. "Your mother is a wreck. She's crying every day. The house is a mess. We have family coming for Labor Day next week. We need you there." "You need a maid," I said. "Hire one." His face turned a darker shade of red. "I am your father. You have obligations to this family." I fulfilled my obligations. I raised my voice. It was the first time I had yelled at him in years. "I got good grades. I stayed out of trouble. I helped Ryan. I cleaned the house. I did everything right. And you looked at me at that dinner and treated me like a stranger." "It was a rent bill," he shouted. "It was $900. Why are you so dramatic about money? You have a good job." "It wasn't the money," I screamed back. "It was the message. You gave Ryan a car, a $30,000 reward for being mediocre, and you gave me a bill for being excellent." "He's a boy," Dad yelled. "He needs a head start. It's different." The words hung in the air. "He needs a head start." "Why?" I asked. My voice dropped to a whisper. "Why does he deserve a head start and I deserve a handicap? Because he's a man. Or because you just love him more?" Dad didn't answer. He looked away. He couldn't look me in the eye. That silence told me everything I needed to know. "You don't miss me," I said, realizing the truth as I spoke. "You miss my labor. You miss the fact that I made your life easy. You're not here because you love me, Dad. You're here because the laundry is piling up." "That is ungrateful," he muttered. "After all we did for you." "You did nothing for me that you didn't do double for Ryan," I said. "I'm done. I am not coming back to be the invisible servant. I would rather sleep on this air mattress for the rest of my life than spend one more night in that house being ignored." I walked to the door and pulled it open. The storm was still raging outside. "Get out," I said. He looked shocked. He had never been kicked out of anywhere in his life. He was a man who owned rooms, but he didn't own this room. My name was on the lease. "If you send me away," he said, his voice low and threatening, "don't expect any help. Ever, no inheritance, no emergency money, nothing, you are on your own." I looked him straight in the eyes. I felt a surge of power. "Dad," I said, "I have been on my own since I was 10 years old. You can't threaten me with something I'm already used to." He flinched. It hit him. He realized his threats were empty because he had never given me security in the first place. He walked past me. He stopped at the threshold. He looked like he wanted to say something else, maybe an apology, maybe another insult. But he saw the look on my face. He saw that the daughter he knew was gone. He turned and walked into the rain. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Click. I leaned my back against the door and slid down to the floor. I was shaking. My adrenaline was spiking. But I felt something else too. I felt clean. I had stood up to the monster in my closet, and I had won. After that night, the dynamic changed. The aggression stopped. They realized they couldn't bully me back. I was gone. My life began to accelerate. At work, without the emotional weight of my family dragging me down, I thrived. I had energy I never knew I possessed. I wasn't spending my lunch breaks calming my mother down on the phone. I wasn't spending my weekends cleaning my parents' garage. I volunteered for a huge project, a massive data migration for a new client. It was the kind of project everyone else was afraid of. It required late nights and meticulous attention to detail. I crushed it. 3 months later, my boss called me into her office. "Elizabeth," she said, "the client is thrilled. You caught errors that would have cost them millions. We're promoting you to team lead." She slid a paper across the desk. It wasn't a bill. It was a contract with a significant raise. "Thank you," I said. I signed it with a steady hand. I went out that night and bought a real bed. A queen-sized bed with a velvet headboard and high thread count sheets. I slept for 10 hours that night. While I was rising, my family was forced to adjust. They couldn't pretend anymore. With me gone, the dysfunction was undeniable. Ryan was the first to change. He had to. He couldn't afford to be helpless anymore. He was paying rent to Dad. He was paying for his own gas. He had to actually work at his job because I wasn't there to save him. He called me about 6 months after I left. "Hey," he said. He sounded tired but clearer. "Hey Ryan," I said. "I learned how to cook," he said awkwardly. "Well, sort of. I made spaghetti. I didn't burn the house down." "That's good," I said, smiling. "And I got a new job," he said. "The other one fired me." "Oh, I'm sorry." "No, don't be," he said. "I deserved it. I didn't know what I was doing. I got a job in sales now. It's entry level. But I'm actually doing the work myself." "I'm proud of you," I said, and I meant it. "Dad is still Dad," Ryan said. "But he's quieter. He realizes he can't just yell things into existence anymore. Mom is taking a yoga class. She's trying to calm down." It was strange to hear. My absence had created a vacuum that forced them to grow. By leaving, I had actually helped them more than by staying. Then, one random Tuesday night, I got a text from my father. I hadn't spoken to him since the night in the rain. I looked at the notification. "Dad, I was looking at old albums today. Found a picture of you at the beach when you were 5. You looked happy. I didn't mean for things to turn out like this." I stared at the screen. I analyzed every word. I didn't mean for things to turn out like this. It wasn't an apology. It was passive. It removed his agency. He was acting like our estrangement was a weather event that just happened, not a direct result of his favoritism and cruelty. I thought about ignoring it. But I wanted to say my piece. One last time, I typed, "Intent doesn't matter as much as impact, Dad. You hurt me. You made me feel small so Ryan could feel big. I had to leave to save myself." I watched the screen. 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. Then the dots disappeared. Then they appeared again. Then they stopped. He never replied. I put the phone down. I didn't feel sad. I felt closure. I realized that he was never going to give me the apology I wanted. He was incapable of it. He was a man trapped in his own ego. And I realized I didn't need his apology. I didn't need him to say I'm sorry to know that I was right. My peace was the proof. My success was the proof. My happiness was the proof. I was free. Has been 2 years now. I still live in the city, but I moved to a nicer apartment. This one has a balcony with a view of the park. It has sunlight. It has plants that I water. I see my family, but on my terms. We have a new tradition. We meet for lunch twice a year, once around Christmas and once in the summer. We meet at a restaurant halfway between us. A neutral ground. I drove to the last lunch in my own car. It's a used SUV I bought myself. I paid for it with my own money. It runs perfectly. When I walked into the restaurant, they were already sitting there. Dad looked older. His hair was thinner. He stood up and gave me a stiff hug. "Hello, Elizabeth," he said. "Hi, Dad." Mom hugged me too tight. She smelled like perfume and anxiety. "You look so thin," she said. "Are you eating?" "I'm eating fine, Mom. I'm training for a half marathon." Ryan was there. He looked different. He had gained a little weight, but he looked more settled. He wasn't the golden boy anymore. He was just a guy. "Hey, Liz," he said. He smiled, and it was a real smile, not a smirk. The lunch was polite. We talked about the weather. We talked about sports. Dad complained about politics. Mom showed me pictures of her garden. They didn't ask me for money. They didn't ask me to fix anything. They didn't hand me any bills. They treated me like a guest. Like a distant relative they wanted to impress. There was no deep emotional connection. The warmth wasn't there. But the abuse wasn't there either. We had settled into a polite, distant truce. I looked at them across the table. I realized that this was the best it was ever going to be. They were never going to be the family I dreamed of. They were never going to see me fully. But that was okay, because I saw myself. I paid for my own lunch. Dad tried to reach for the check, a performance of fatherhood, but I put my card down first. "I got it," I said. He looked at me. He nodded. He didn't argue. He respected the money. It was the only language he understood. When I got home that evening, I opened my closet. On the top shelf in a small shoebox, I keep mementos. Inside is the yellow piece of paper, the rent bill, rent agreement. Tenant, Elizabeth, $900. I took it out and smoothed the wrinkles. I don't keep it to be angry. I keep it because it is the most important document of my life. That bill was the catalyst. If they hadn't pushed me that far, if they had just been mildly annoying instead of cruel, I might have stayed. I might have wasted another 10 years trying to earn their love. That bill set me free. It was the knife that cut the cord. I put the paper back in the box. I closed the closet door. I walked out onto my balcony. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. I took a deep breath of the cool air. I thought about the girl I used to be. The girl who swept up broken glass. The girl who fixed tires in the rain. The girl who waited for applause that never came. I whispered to her, "We made it." If you are reading this, and you feel like the invisible one in your family, if you feel like you are setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, stop. You cannot earn love from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You cannot fix people who are comfortable with your pain. Leaving is not a betrayal. It is a rescue mission. You are rescuing the most important person in your life, yourself. It will be hard. It will be lonely. You will cry in a motel room. But then you will buy your own keys. You will sign your own lease. You will stand in your own doorway. And you will realize that being alone in peace is better than being together in pieces. Walk away. Don't look back. The road is yours.